Alright, so while we got the engine out, we're going to go ahead and grease this puppy up. We got a couple of zerk fittings. Haven't even found them all, but we're going to find them all today and use a low temp grease. This is what you want to use, not necessarily this brand, but a low temp grease is going to be your best bet. Well, it's not going to make a difference if you're in a relatively warmer area where it only gets a little below zero, a little below freezing, then don't even worry about it, I would say, because obviously your wheel bearings, your trailers, your other vehicles that run all year round, you know, they don't have this kind of stuff. But if you're in a very cold area where it gets down to negative 30, negative 40 degrees, then I would recommend something like this, because your other greases that aren't made for low temps are just going to get a lot stiffer in that kind of cold, whereas this will remain pliable and do what it's made to do. As you can see there, that's what it's rated to, negative 54 Celsius or negative 65 Fahrenheit. So I also just noticed that the grease already in the sled was the same color, so that's a good sign. I'm not a grease expert, but I've just read that mixing greases is generally not a great idea. So anyways, I'll go point out the fittings as we get to them, but first let's pop some gloves on and then fill up our grease gun. Here's the gun we'll be using. If you've never used one of these before, you just pull the handle all the way out, unscrew it at the top. I should say pull the plunger all the way out, unscrew the top, pop both ends off your grease canister. Not sure if it totally matters which direction. I don't see any arrows. This one looks a little neater because it's just plastic, whereas this one has the metal rim on it. Yeah, so I'm going to put this side down. Don't know if it matters. So you just pop her in the tube. See if that's as far as she goes. Alright, there. Yeah, I think I would say that metal rim up is a good idea because it'll just sit like that. Take your top, screw it back on. These threads are a little tricky, trying to make sure I don't cross thread it. There we go. Just had to get over that little metal can lip on the tube. Alright. So you've got it screwed on tight. Take your thumb, pull back a bit on the plunger while pushing slightly in on this. Don't just let it go, but slowly, as this is pushed in, allow the plunger to descend upward. It doesn't have a long way to go because you have your grease shoved in there, so that's what it'll look like when you start out brand new. But since this is loose, that means your plunger's spring activated trying to go up, so that's what's giving you pressure. And then as you pump on this, you're opening a seal here, I'm guessing, and that's what's allowing the grease that's being pushed that way to come out of your fitting. So we're just going to get the grease flowing, so we're going to give it some pumps until we see grease coming out the end, because you don't want to be pumping on it while it's on the zerk fitting without the grease being ready to go. So pump, pump, pump. Oh, there we go. Okay, things squirted off like a little fountain. All right. So first, zerk fitting. It's located right here. Wouldn't hurt to take a rag and just kind of wipe off some of the goo before you add new grease, so you're not jamming dirt into the... Pop it on the zerk. This is for your steering. There we go. Now you're just going to pump. I can see grease squirting out from right here. So once you get clean grease coming out, which I have, shouldn't be any reason to keep pumping it forever. That means it's full, so possibly this was greased up sooner than I realized, but I just want to make sure they all have good grease. Well, that's nice. Our zerk just popped off inside the grease gun, so that's fun. So we're going to have to screw that back in. It would be better if zerk fittings had a thread on them so that they would stay in there, because that one, as you could see, popped out quite easily. But I did figure out what I was doing wrong. So the grease gun has a threaded cylinder on the top. You basically want to unthread it, lefty, loosey a little bit, loosen it up, pop it onto your fitting, tighten it down. Now it's nice and tight. Pump the grease. When you're done, loosen it up a bit and pop it off. So I didn't do that, so I was kind of forcing the issue. There's a spring in here which kind of tightens and loosens a probably some clamping type mechanism in there. So anyways, just be aware of that if you have a similar grease gun. Okay, our next zerk is right here. Let's clean it up a bit. Another part of the steering apparatus. There you can get a good look at it. Loosen up our thing. Pop it on. Oh yeah, that's way easier that way. So that's definitely what I was doing wrong. Twist it left to tighten it and right to loosen it. So pump the grease. I don't think we got a good bite on there. Yeah, the way way to know that you don't have a good bite is that your grease is just squirting out on the side of the zerk instead of somewhere else. So let's loosen it up again. Fun thing about working with grease is everything gets greasy. It's hard to get a grip on it. Alright, that's better. On this one I can see some grease weeping out the top. So that means we got enough. That means it's filled up. We'll pop this off, find the next one. Alright, next up, this is our, going down to our ski. Don't know the name for this, but that's how you can find it. I would say if you don't see grease coming out and you've given it like 7 good pumps, that's probably good. Definitely don't want to overdo it because you could blow a seal or something. Handy way to get these off when your fingers are greased up is just take some pliers. Same thing on the other side, on the other ski. Alright, and then for the next one, we're actually going to go under the sled. So start here at your ignition area, your key, come straight down, under your, up in the track, and you're going to find it right there. So I'm not obviously going to be able to film greasing it up, but just wanted to point out where it is. So this is your front shock underneath your suspension. Alright, so number one, I'm just going to run through all the zerks on your suspension because there's a few, and then you can grease them all up. So this is front shock, furthest up under the suspension, number one. Basically, let me just point out, anytime you have a shaft running widthwise underneath your track, there's a good chance there's going to be a zerk on it. So that's one. Coming back, this is your rear shock. This is the lowest point of it. Here you have a shaft. And so sure enough, right under, let me hold the camera with this hand. You can see my pointer finger down underneath the shock. I can feel the zerk right under there. Right under the base of the shock, there's a zerk. You've got this upper spring thing. Bunch of grease. Inside that pile of grease, there's a zerk. You know, horizontal bar going across. Another horizontal bar here, zerk. So there's your rear wheel. Right in front of it is this. You have one on top there. There's a zerk. And you also have one on the bottom. This is your bottom bar that the strap connects to. My finger is, can't really see it through there, but there's a zerk right there as well. So I found a 6th zerk. So you have here the, let's see, back shock at the base of that. I have a mirror set up so you can see it. So you have one zerk underneath the shock and another one with that tiny little horizontal bar going in between that, this piece here. So you have zerk there, and then underneath there's a little half bar, as you can see in the mirror there. 1, 2. So there you go. I'm listening to Essential Craftsman podcast in the background, so check that out if you don't know about it. If you're interested in learning how to build a house, it's pretty good stuff. So to do these two zerks, there and up there, which were super difficult. Took me probably 30 minutes, maybe even an hour. Yeah, requires a lot of patience. Unless you're going to take your entire track off, which no one wants to do that. So loosen these up on both sides. That'll give you some play in your track. This is the way I did it. I started wedging here, trying to make this space bigger, which is what you need to get your grease fitting on there. But I ended up finding out a better way is to put something, this wrench happened to be the right distance in between these two, and then you want to pry up from the bottom, because if I take this pry out, then a lot of my track loosening is just going to be taken up in this space, and it's not actually giving me as much up there. So put something to pry the entire track wider, and then pry from the bottom. In my case, I used a board with just a little socket sitting underneath it. And as I push up on the wrench, that's going to raise the roof, which is what you need. But honestly, the biggest difficulty in tight spaces is jamming your hand into the tight space, putting it on, and then getting it to tighten. When this thing's covered in grease, your hands are immediately very slippery. So I found I'm only able to really get it done with the gloves that have some grip built in. These are the Grease Monkey brand, I believe. So if you just have the gloves that don't have any grip built in, you're probably really going to struggle, because that's what I was doing for a long time until I switched gloves. So